The Ozark's BDR-X can feel like two completely different rides. One minute you're cruising through gravel roads that are smooth, and the next you're picking your way through terrain that really demands your full attention. So how hard is it really? Is this something that a newer rider can handle? Or is it a route that requires serious experience? Well, the good news is I just rode the entire thing. And in this video, I'm going to give you an honest breakdown of what you can expect. This is the big question everyone is asking about the new Ozark route. How hard is this thing really? I mean, it has 10 advanced sections and at least 30 water crossings. Listen, there's a lot to unpack here, and we're going to break it down. But as an overview, let me say this isn't extreme enduro, but it's not a beginner trail either. Even the main route has some loose rocky climbs that are going to get your attention pretty fast. The difficulty of this ride will change based on weather, mostly rain or extreme heat. On the Ozark's BDR-X, your preparation matters more than your raw skill. So let's get into it together. The first thing we need to talk about is the terrain of the route, because it's actually one of the things I love the most about riding in the Ozarks. The terrain is just a really good mix of quality twisty pavement, scenic gravel roads, 2-track, and some more difficult chunky rocks with fun water crossings. Seriously, this area has something for every rider, no matter what your skill level is. The BDR-X is set up with 50% pavement and 50% off-road riding, or what adventure riders would consider off-road riding. Let me just start off by saying that the paved sections of this route are fun, really fun. It cuts through a section of an iconic motorcycle road called the Pig Trail. And street riders come from all over the country to experience this stretch of pavement. It reminds me a lot of the Dragon's Tail in Eastern Tennessee. It's just a little shorter. And once you get off the pavement, you're going to find a lot of gravel on this route. I'd estimate the gravel roads make up close to 30% of the off-road sections, with a large portion of that being found on the western half of the loop. And the gravel varies throughout the route, but much of it is large cut gravel, and it produces a lot of dust. If the area hasn't gotten much rain, this gravel is also going to be loose. There's a lot of corners to contend with, so make sure that your riding technique is on point before you start flying down these gravel roads. And if it's wet, the gravel packs in a little bit better. It's actually a pleasant surprise. When I rode this route, it was really dry, so everything was loose. But your experience may be different depending on when you ride it. The dirt 2-track was awesome to see. There were several sections that didn't have much gravel or even embedded rocks. It was just a really nice, clean dirt trail through the woods, and the traction was really nice in these sections. Several of these dirt 2-tracks also featured some great whoops that would let you have some fun at speed. And like most terrain, the dirt 2-track is beginner friendly, but it can increase in difficulty if you just pick up the pace a little bit. If I'm being honest, these were some of my favorite parts of the route because it gave me a break from all the dust and the gravel, and in the woods, it's a lot cooler, so you get a break from the heat too. So if you're doing the math with me, about 80% of this trip is paved or gravel and nice dirt 2-track. We still need to break down the remaining 20%. 20% of this route is what I would consider intermediate to advanced riding sections. And you're going to find some intermediate stuff on the main route, but it's presented in very short, manageable pieces, usually 50 yards or less in length. Now, I already mentioned that there were a couple loose rocky hill climbs on the main route, but they're quick, just enough to keep you paying attention. Don't worry, you're going to be fine on the main route, but you should be warned that there were some little sections that can go sideways if you're being careless. Overall, I think BDR did a great job of properly labeling the advanced sections too. I found that the alt-hard sections actually lived up to their name. And on my big bike, they were so much fun and made me really focus on my line choices. The advanced sections feature a lot of deep washouts, large embedded rocks, and some really chunky loose rocks. They also have some pretty deep water crossings and really slick mud, especially if it's rained. On a couple sections, I also found some short sandbars near water crossings. That keeps things interesting for sure. Let's take a couple minutes and let's talk about weather in the Ozarks and how that can impact your experience on this ride. I'm going to assume that most riders out there understand the risk around extreme heat and cold conditions. I'll sum it up like this. It gets hot and humid during the summer months, so you need to plan for that. And remember that difficulty increases significantly when you're exhausted. And when sweat's running down your face on the trail, sometimes it can be hard to focus. In the winter, it gets really cold in the Ozarks, and it's hard to focus on your line choice whenever your hands are freezing and you can't feel your feet. Just plan accordingly, and you're going to be fine for the heat and the cold. This route becomes a different ride when it rains. During the spring months, the Ozarks get an average of 15 inches of rain. Creek levels rise very quickly, and all those dirt roads with the fun whoops become mud roads in just a matter of hours. The loose rocky hill climbs that were a subtle reminder to pay attention become slick, muddy hills that will test all of your skills. Listen, whatever you do, don't make the mistake of underestimating the difficulty of this route if it's raining. Section 1, Jasper to Deer, has 3 caution indicators for water crossings. If it's flooded, you should backtrack and detour around these crossings because they are actually dangerous. And there's no shame in turning around and planning to revisit those water crossings, when conditions allow a safe and fun crossing. Overall, I felt like Section 1 offered the most challenging riding on this route. It features those water crossings I mentioned earlier, as well as 3 alternate, harder options for the rider that's feeling really adventurous. But the bike you're riding also factors into the difficulty of this route, so let's break that down now. I took my Pan America on the Ozark BDRX, and it was absolutely the right bike and the right choice for me as a rider. I love that bike, and I feel like it does most things really well for me. I can handle the heavier bike, and it's comfortable for me on the road. Sure, it increases the difficulty in extreme conditions, but I also kind of like that. But what if you don't ride a Pan Am or a GS or another large adventure bike like me? Well, that's great too. It's not really about the bike, it's about your comfort level as a rider. Small to mid-size adventure bikes are easier to manage. And on our trip, we had riders on everything from a KLX 300 to a Tenere, all the way up to my Pan America. And all these bikes really performed well, and so did the riders. The key thing to consider when choosing a bike is how comfortable are you on the machine that you chose. If you're confident of your skill level on the bike you bring, the ride becomes easier, more manageable. The main route is actually a pleasure with the great scenic overlooks when you're on a bike that you can actually handle. So my advice is always start smaller and increase in bike size as your skill level increases. Big bikes on this route are definitely doable, but require more skill and confidence as a rider. They also require the right tires to fully enjoy this adventure. See, big bikes are great, but they don't get traction like the little bikes. And tires matter a lot more for those large ADV bikes because we always seem to be trying to find traction. So make sure you start this route with fresh tires. If you want to ride the whole thing, you're going to need them. Your line choice matters more on the big bike as well. And a word of caution for you new riders that bought a huge adventure bike, especially if you're going to ride the alt-hard sections, here's a quick test to determine if you should take that big bike on those alt-hard sections. If you don't understand what it means to choose your line, the alt-hard sections are not for you yet. The difficulty of this route is also dependent on the skill level of the rider. So let's dive into that a little bit too. How do you define skill level for riders? Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I've known guys who bought an adventure bike. They went one weekend to an OHV park to ride the side-by-side trails and came out feeling like a world-class rider. And they have confidence for sure, but very little practical skill. They got no training, no travel experience, and no common sense for what they're getting into. If you ask them, they would proudly say they're probably an intermediate to advanced rider because they rode their bike through a well-manicured trail system that I could drive my wife's Prius on. Just kidding. My wife doesn't actually drive a Prius. I've also met guys who've been riding their bikes for years. They've completed different levels of off-road training. They've tackled a handful of BDRs. They ride every single weekend at a local spot. And some of them even compete in off-road races. If I ask those guys about their skill level, at first they're reluctant to even answer. And often they say, I'm a solid intermediate rider. Here's the truth. You need to have a realistic expectation of your own riding abilities. You need to be honest with yourself when you're planning a trip like this and apply the advice I'm going to give you based on your assessment of your own skills. The beginner rider is someone who's new to the adventure world. Maybe this is going to be your first BDR or even your first off-road experience. You have experience riding like on the pavement and you can handle your bike, but you really lack real-world experience off-road. The beginner also doesn't have much experience planning multi-day adventures. Maybe gravel is the biggest challenge that you've experienced so far, but you're looking for more. If you are a true beginner, this route is not ideal for you, especially if you're wanting to fly solo. It's doable, okay, guys, but it's going to be a challenge for you. And you may find yourself getting frustrated with the slow pace, and no one likes picking up their bike over and over again. Here's my advice for the beginner riders. Plan on doing this route with someone else. Do some local riding before you take off and get more comfortable on gravel roads before you set out. You should also skip the advanced sections on this trip, and you'll be better served to revisit them on a later date. The intermediate rider is someone who has more time in the seat of an adventure bike. You've likely been riding for a year or two, and you understand technique for different types of terrain. You've probably done some training, or at least you ride regularly outside of your big trips. Intermediate riders spend more time off-road, and they enjoy challenges from time to time. They do understand how to choose a line through sketchy sections on the trail, and they also know when it's time to call it quits for the day. If that's you, Ozark BDRX is perfect. I would highly recommend that you put this trip on your bucket list and make some memories. The advanced rider is a seasoned rider who has learned about their bike and about themselves. They have a solid understanding of the terrain they're riding and how the bike reacts to it in different conditions. They're confident in their ability and their bike. Advanced riders have also spent years challenging themselves and learning how to navigate difficult situations off-road. They're prepared for an emergency and plan for the unexpected. If that's you, this trip is going to be fun and it's going to be an engaging ride. Sure, there are some sections that are going to seem boring for a while, and you may need to spend a little more time on the advanced trails to keep your interest piqued, but this route has something special for you too. My advice to you advanced riders would be try riding all of these hard sections in both directions. It keeps things fresh and it doubles the time that you spend in your element. No matter what your skill level is, this ride has something for you. Just make sure you pay attention because this ride feels harder than most BDRs I've been on. A lot of it's flowy. You find yourself getting into a groove and just naturally speeding up. And that can catch you off guard if you're not careful. You're smiling one minute and fully focused on what's in front of you the next. So, what's the final verdict on the Ozark's BDR-X? Well, we spent some time breaking all of it down together and talked about specifics for all of you riders out there. But in truth, it's pretty simple. If you have some off-road experience and some confidence, this is a very doable ride. Are parts of this route hard? Yes, they are. But those sections are clearly marked. And if you're not ready, there's detours that'll take you right around it. You need to pick the right bike for you, plan your route well, and trust your abilities. The Ozark's BDR-X isn't about being the hardest ride out there. It's about being just challenging enough to keep things interesting without taking away from the experience. It's the kind of route that rewards preparation, but doesn't punish you for learning along the way. And for a lot of riders, that's exactly what makes it so good. Because it's not about proving how good you are. It's about pushing yourself just far enough to discover what you're capable of. In the next episode, I'll share some insights from camping along the Ozark's BDR-X. I'll explain what options are available and where you can find unbelievable sights along the route. Until then, I'm encouraging you to get out there and find your adventure.